Hello and welcome to OT, the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time, and how to spend it. My name is Editor-in-Chief Felix Schultz.
And I'm Co-Editor-in-Chief Andy Green. How you going, Felix?
Good. I wanted to make up a job title on the spur of things. You could have gone with Editor-at-Large or, I don't know.
Editor-at-Large. What a fancy title.
Yeah, the vague and meaningless separation of editor titles, which is
just means you don't have a desk, I think.
Yeah. Or like, we want to give you a title but not a promotion. The classic move. Speaking of things that are large and very much in charge, IWC's Ingenieur is a topic of conversation again, Andy, because IWC is sponsoring the app.
They are long-time supporters of the pod, so of course make sure you check out all of their 2023 releases, but one we've been chatting about quite a bit is the new Ingenieur. And today you've got we're dropping in a chat from someone that you spoke to at Watches and Wonders a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we're still talking about the Ingenieur with IWC Veteran and board member Hannes Pantli. Not too many spoilers, but Mr. Pantli met Gerald Genta. He was around the first time the Ingenieur was created. Well, the one that, in the 70s. And he said that this Watches and Wonders was his 50th trade show. Been doing it for a long time.
If we're in succession for a minute, who is Hans on the board?
He's on the... I don't know. Look, I hesitate to... I don't know what... I think it was sales. He was a sales guy historically. Okay. So maybe Carl? Is Carl the CFO?
Yeah, waiting for that. The golden parachute, maybe.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to infer that any of these guys are from Succession.
No, it's purely because he's a board member. So he's very important and he's been around a long time. Yeah.
And he sort of got the, I think they sort of senior emeritus sort of position these days.
He's got that pedigree.
Really lovely guy to chat to. But yeah, so we'll get to that in a minute. But before then, Andy, what have you been up to?
Fair bit, Felix. On the topic of IWC, I sent you a TikTok just before, a little bit of TikTok to talk about. But this was a TikTok with Daniel Mack, he's a guy who goes up to people in their cars and asks what they do for a living.
Classic, yeah.
Seen that? He went up to Lewis Hamilton and asked what she was wearing. And it turned out they were both wearing a Pilot's Chrono 41, but the Mercedes AMG Petronas F1 Team Edition, which is like the Miami Blue 41 Chrono.
Yeah. Yep, with a new pink strap on it this time around.
Yeah. I don't think they both had the pink strap. I think it was one was pink, one was black. Yep. But, playing a bit of basketball and IWC basketball and basketball net. It was a bit of IWC content.
But nice.
Oh, 100% SponCon, but I didn't mind it.
Yeah, I saw on her dinky that he's also been spotted wearing a new unreleased watch.
Classic. Little leaks from the ambassador. But on the topic of TikTok, something happened during the week. I did something we shouldn't do. But there was a bit of drama in the comments somewhere. I get fed watch TikTok. Now that we've allowed it into our lives, I'm getting fed watch TikToks.
How is Mike? We should get Mike Naveau on.
Don't mind those. I don't mind the, walking up to people on the street, asking them about their watch. Don't mind it. I don't mind the live negotiations. Everyone's doing the live negotiations.
I love a good live negotiation. Yep.
I don't even mind the Anthony Ferrer stuff where he's, negotiating with clients on the phone and it's got dramatic movements and cut up into 4 parts. I don't mind that. But what I do mind...
I haven't got that yet. Okay, what do you mind?
What I do mind is blatant misrepresentation under the guise of watch expert, watch influencer, whatever you want to call yourself. Yeah, I went into the Rolex boutique and they didn't have this and the models are wrong, the price, all that sort of stuff. That's what bothers me. Anyway, I got fed one.
Are you simping for Rolex again?
Well, I got fed one and it was like, Rolex called us up to come look at this $150,000, watch that has a 10-year wait. All right. I don't need to get into the fact that there is no 10-year wait for things, right? Models do not exist for 10 years. So fine. Clickbait, whatever. $150,000 watch. This was a day-date with a turquoise dial in 36 mil.
I think
the retail on that watch, Felix?
Yep.
Do you know the retail?
About 60 Aussie?
$68,100 Australian.
So
and this was an Australian video.
Oh, yes, I have seen this one. I scrolled right on past.
Oh, so you might have missed my exchange with the young gent then.
I'm going to find out. Please, we'll talk about it offline.
And so I commented. I said, "This is not a $150,000 watch."
Sure.
Oh, how much is it then? It's $68,100, which is the exact Australian retail price. And I know that because I checked, right? So I'm 100%
You sent
correct.
a DM. Hey, how much is this?
And he goes, you're wrong. And I said, well, I'm not wrong because you can get a day date for like $50,000, maybe a few hundred on top of that, right? $51,000. So why would a turquoise dial add $100,000 to this? No dial exists.
Yeah.
You actually cannot spend more than, I think, $120,000 on a 36mm day date unless you start getting gem set bracelets and stuff. But even then, there's so few watches.
Yeah.
$150,000. And then I'm looking like maybe he looked at Chrono, but no, he went. Yep. I went into the boutique. I got called up. So
he doubled down.
You doubled down. I said, you don't double. And you know what happened then the next day? What? I got like a profile view from him. So maybe he kind of, you get those notifications. So-and-so looked at your profile.
Don't you know who I am?
He might have. Yeah, he might have. Maybe I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. But I just couldn't believe the double down on the, no, you're wrong. When it is just so absurd. Anyway, I should have done it. I did it.
Yeah, I do a bit of that low stakes stuff. Like I'm like, that's shit. I'm not as informed.
It was more the misrepresentation, like this $150,000 watch with a 10-year wait. Like it's just nonsense, and it's not good for the industry. And when I see that stuff and it's like it's actually bad, that's when I get annoyed.
And also, I mean, I don't think it's that much of a difference to say this 110,000. You can say the same thing with a different way. You can say this $60,000 watch is impossible to get, and it has the same impact and is true.
Well, it's meaningless content because you're just putting something out there that's untrue in several ways for the sake of drumming up hype, and it's hyperbole. But there's actually no effort in it. You've just been lazy. You've been in the boutique and they've had this watch there and they've shown you or whatever. But if you don't know the price and you're not in the market for that watch, they've probably not called you in to look at it to try and sell it to you. So, you've seen it. You've not even remembered the price right.
Sure.
And then you want to, using that as clickbait for a video that just is no good. Like you've just created trash content on the internet for no reason. So anyway, but it got heated.
That's our new tagline. It's not watches time and how to spend it. It's trash content on the internet for no reason.
Yeah, it was just noise. Like, give me back my...
Yeah, it's pretty grim. I've been having thoughts about that too. But what else have you been up to, TikTok drama boy?
Well, speaking of drama, I saw Dungeons and Dragons last night.
How did you feel? This is not your normal bag. I'm going to call it.
I'd heard that it was pretty good.
Sure.
So I thought, okay, well, if it's a good movie, I'll go watch it.
Yep.
2 hours. That's about, that's a good enough time. It was pretty funny. Like I really liked Chris Pine's character in it. I related to the kind of the stupidity of it all. I don't really know why it was called Dungeons and Dragons, but it was explained to me that it's an adventure game. So they go on an adventure, and I kind of said, well, can't most films be like a Dungeons and Dragons film then?
Well, it's all about the IP. It's like Transformers. You know what I mean?
Well, it didn't scream out to me. Yeah, but Transformers, there's transforming cars. This kind of had like mythical creatures and magic and stuff. But I'm like, what's the Dungeons and Dragons part? Like, what's the? Because I don't know anything about the game. So what is the IP?
Well, yeah, it's a game. It's been around since like the 70s, and it's it's a whole. It's like what they're trying to do is it has. What a movie studio is trying to do is what they've done with Marvel, which are comics that have been around since the 70s or 50s or whatever. And they've got this immense, back catalogue of stories that have already been told, plus an incredibly rabid built-in fan base. This is their play with that. Like they did with Transformers, they'll do it with this. It's
I get that. And I probably liked the film because I didn't understand what the Dungeons and Dragons element was.
Yeah, and
that's sort of my point.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. They probably there's stuff in there that if you're massively into it, you'll get all the Easter eggs and you'll understand what's happening. But also, you can go in and go, oh, this is an enjoyable way to spend 2 hours, and maybe you'll buy some more stuff, or down the line. So
there was a dungeon in it, and there was one dragon, a real chubby dragon, which was
little chunky boy.
Little fat boy, a little fat fella. But yeah, I think that's probably why I enjoyed it. Like I was expecting there might be some, lore or background or whatever. Like Transformers is cars, that transform. Sure. Like there's a concept to it. But I was just like, this could be any kind of adventure / magic movie that I've gone and seen. Not in a bad way.
And also, honestly, it's probably because they all like owe it like the genre owes so much to Dungeons and Dragons, like because there's the thing of like all like so many like Hollywood screenwriters who are all essentially nerds, like grew up on it.
Again, I saw one dragon, I saw one dungeon, so the plural's not there. Could have had more dungeons, could have had more dragons.
So is that your review?
No, it was a good film.
My main question is Hugh Grant's character the same character from Paddington 2?
Oh.
Is Phoenix Buchanan, has he, I don't think he's assumed identity?
I don't think you can do much worse than Phoenix Buchanan. So it's a no from me. This guy was a walk in the park. Phoenix Buchanan is one of the worst people on the planet.
No. I watched that movie today, by the way, this morning. Sunday morning, Paddington 2, get it on. Perfect way to start the day.
I got an Instagram memory that 1 year ago today, I was watching Paddington 2.
Mate, it's the greatest story ever told.
May 7, watch Paddington 2 Day.
Yeah, I've had some, I've been doing some things. I haven't watched any Dungeons & Dragons movies. I did watch Paddington. But I did, I sent you an article before, because we've been talking about my collective, our mate William Gibson, famed best-selling author, and founder of the cyberpunk genre, who also wrote one of the most seminal, important pieces of watch writing, I think, to have been done. In 1999 for Wired magazine, he wrote a bit about eBay, and his watch buying habits on eBay, which is, I think, still relevant today. Just a reminder to anyone that hasn't read it, you should go read it, and you'll feel, seen.
So your guy, Willie Gibson, is a watch guy?
Yeah, famously. He kind of was the one that got me into watches. I've probably, I might have told you this story, but you probably haven't connected the dots. He wrote about watches in a really specific way in one of his books. There was like a character had a RAAF JLC Mark 11, which is and I'm like, what is this? Why is this so specific? Like, what are all these words and letters in combination? Like when I was a teenager, and I, went down that rabbit hole. So, and here we are today.
Why haven't we had William Gibson on the podcast?
He's a pretty big deal. He's pretty reclusive. He doesn't do a lot of media. I did like back when SJP was at Hodinkee, I'm like, you should get, you were the people that would have the clout to do this. You could get him on, but he hasn't done it. So, and I think he's also moved on. Like he's I think he sort of went through a phase and moved on from the phase. But
where's he based?
He's Canadian. I want to say Toronto, maybe Vancouver. Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I reckon we could track down his email.
I mean, I've this is another thing like that I've been thinking about, because I've been going through, like you, with your meaningless TikTok drama. I recently, I don't know if I told you, but my Twitter account got hacked a while ago because
you didn't tell me this.
For some reason they turned off two-factor authentication for everyone. And I got access to it back. And, just for lols, I was going through my direct messages, which I don't think I would have sent anyone really a direct message since in the last 10 years. But like there's, and like, back then, William Gibson was big on Twitter. So, you tweet him and you get replies back, and it was really cool. But yeah, I've got like 13-year-old DMs with, Hodinkee and stuff in there, which is wild.
Oh, that is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I've just been thinking about like the cycle of, in the sort of enthusiasm and connoisseurship. Like, I've got people, in my life that were once into watches and now are not in any significant way except for the one or two watches that they kept, and I think there's generations of enthusiasts coming and going, and I wonder if what sort of changed and what stayed the same. Like, it must be like if I was, 15-year-old Felix getting interested in watches today, it would be so much easier and so much harder at the same time. You know what I mean?
It's an interesting point. I think everyone you kind of like have people that go through these cycles at the same time as you. So the people you meet, there were people that if you think back would have dropped off in that first kind of couple of years. Yeah. Like, I don't hear from these three people that used to come to the watch dinners anymore.
They bought a Rolex up and are now perfectly happy with it.
Yeah, or they're just over it. And I think watches are inherently, it's a hard interest to maintain.
It's expensive.
For a long time. It's expensive, and it's just gotten more and more expensive. So unless you were around a really, really early on and you made a heap of money because everything went up and you could kind of stay in it as like one of the old guard, everyone else is kind of, you're going to have to like really commit, or you kind of just like, you commit to kind of rotating stuff through or being happy with the play. But even the people that work in watches, like we see this cycle of, these people that are really into it. You can almost tell the ones that end up working full time. And we're always talking about it, but they end up, working at Hodinkee or Blog to Watch. I think there's a handful of places that can actually employ you.
Auction, or and there's that thing as well, like,
well, then they go to an auction house or a brand.
And I think they're probably the longest. I guess it's always been that way, and I guess they're the people that stay in it the longest, that are public about it. Whereas I'm sure there's regular people out there that have just been collecting watches for the last 30 years because they like it and they can afford to do it, and they don't feel the need to, be public about it. But yeah, I think that the thing for me, and I'm not. This is sort of off the top of my dome, like. When we got interested in watches, we could, because there was less interest, like you still had to search to find stuff out. But, that I think that effort was rewarded because we couldn't, maybe get a bargain on something or, get into something, early. I don't think it's the case anymore. Like, everyone seems to have a knowledge about, Moonswatch is a great example. Like,
and everyone asks you for that stuff as well. Like the people that over the last few years, especially, that have come out of the woodworks, that are specifically asking, "Oh, Andy, you like watches? I feel this. You like watches? Where can I get a Moonswatch? Where can I get, this steel sports thing? What about this? Do you know anyone?
Is this a good watch to buy? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're just more mainstream as well, which is the nature of, I guess, the internet. But it is.
And even that, that TikTok thing as well. That even plays into it. Like, you see, like. The other thing that sort of has been at the back of my mind around this is like all the stuff around the Met Gala that happened the other week. Like, when we were covering it, back at Time and Tide, 10 years ago, or however long, 5 years ago, that would have been, you had to do the hunting, and it was pretty sort of organic. Like, sure, there was, the Tag Heuer ambassador was wearing a Tag Heuer, but now it's all mainstreamed, and you're getting the press releases and all that. It's a bit different.
I tell you what, I vividly remember how hard that was, because you'd go to Getty Images, rip those images off, and every single wrist shot, it was always like at waist height where they put the watermark, and so watches was such an afterthought. Like, it was never really about the watches when it came to the output, and now it's like every single ambassador or friend of is like jamming it down your throat. It's so hard to miss. And especially over the last few years as well, watch brands are so proactive on emailing those press. You didn't even used to get those press releases for those things. Like, you wouldn't
get them 2 days later. Now you get them before the event. Yeah,
and that would only be for the top tier, like the absolute face of the brands.
Yeah, all the ones that were, like Chopard was always quite good at that, because I think they've got a bigger red carpet presence historically. Like,
huge. Yeah, well, they got huge names. Now it's like any person that one of the stylists they work with that wore it. Exact model, half a dozen photos. Here it is. Like, it's obviously part of the agreement and part of like the output. One hand, it makes it easier, but even that is like less rewarding. Kind of tracking down, seeing what people were wearing, figuring it out. Like, it's just it's so much more front of mind. Which again, exposure, mainstreamness.
I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I mean, I one part of me wants to be all grumpy old gatekeeper, but the other part of me, I think how do you make it better? How do you I think you've still got to fight against that, that terrible popcorn content, to have something meaningful, but also to, I guess you champion people that do it well, like Breen at Timepiece and, some other ones that seem to, and, I mean, even like that Mike Naveau or some of those TikTok people that are a bit better at it, there's angles there, sure. Like, they're selling what they've got, and but I've never been one to hate the commercial side of it. But
well, look at Jeremy Strong. So obviously we talked about how he's wearing a Richard Mille in Succession, and then he turns up to the Met Gala wearing one. Yep. And there's all this other news about him being a method actor, and I feel like that maybe that's the angle. Like, is he continuing on his character? Has he become a affiliate of the brand or a friend of the brand through that kind of?
Yeah. Well, he shouldn't be continuing his character because of bloody finished Succession.
Yeah. Well, and but. There's points there. There's conversation points there. It is what it is.
And I think, and this is segue. This is a segue to my next dot point, which I'll read out. Moonswatch, taking the piss or genius. There was a new Moonswatch version that came out that had a pink chronograph seconds hand, which on one hand is let's be polite and say that's a minimal design update, but like it's playing off that so well, and I don't know if I love it or I hate it.
Super. So not only that minimal update, but it was in the press release, in the ads and stuff, it was created under the pink moon.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a real thing that they put in there.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to a point where press releases I take with a pretty, my favourite ones, speaking of, are Rish and Mill. Rish and Mill press releases are incredible. If you ever want to, if you wanted to like get a hammer or some sort of common object and get the guy that writes Rish and Mill press releases to do it, it would sound phenomenal. Like, where kinetic force meets, impenetrable alloys of, I don't know, the press release, I don't care about. Like, the marketing is what it is, but I don't know. Moonswatch. It's feeding the beast.
Feeding the beast, huh? I found that so strange. The pink moon thing just came across as odd to me.
It's like, all right, we're going to go with the theme of moon. It's called Moonswatch. How many times can we iterate the moon? We've got blue moons. We've got pink moons. We've got, total eclipses. This is it. That's the product category. Let's work it out.
It's just a bit of a desperate sell for a watch that doesn't need it. They're wildly popular. Everyone still lines up to get them.
Well, they need to say something. They can't say, hey, it now comes in pink. I mean, I would have done a charity tie-in.
Anyway, we are now time travelling back, a month and a half, 2 months to Felix's adventures around Watches and Wonder.
It's getting long in the tooth, isn't it? Let's get Mr. Pantli on and chat to this lovely old chap about what it was like back in the day. I wonder if he has easy shoes.
Dude, he'd have stories. He'd have so many stories.
So many stories. Let's get him on. I'm trying to think how to start this. Again, we're here surrounded by all sorts of... It's almost like, bits of the IWC factory have come to the PAL Expo, and in front of me is... I think I could call you a legend in IWC. Is that okay?
Well, whatever you like. I say I'm part of the inventory,
An important part of the inventory. It is a lovely to speak to you, Mr. Hannes Pantli. My first question, and I know we only have 30-minute time slot, so it'll have to be an edited answer, is what is your role at IWC?
Okay, now I have a contract as consultant. I'm on the board. I was on the board of shareholders a long time. I was responsible for 25 years for worldwide marketing and sales. So it's quite important.
When did you start working for IWC?
Well, okay, you really want to know it?
A decade, maybe.
1972.
1972.
Yeah.
And so that's this is quite convenient timing because it was around that time.
Oh, well, I don't know if it was convenient. I think I was a little bit stupid because when I entered the company, that was the beginning of the crash of the Swiss watch industry,
And what was that like?
Well, 1972 was the best year in history in those days of IWC. And then all of a sudden, everything collapsed. The reason, everybody talks about the watch crisis, but it's not the quartz crisis, they said. But the crisis was that there was something called the Treaty of Bretton Woods. There was the exchange rate between US dollars and other currencies was turned loose. Besides that, the price of gold was turned loose, went through the ceiling, and on top of that, the technology, quartz movements that were more accurate than the mechanical movements. And this all together really catastrophe. And also in Schaffhausen, it was terrible,
And why did you stay through? Why did you not give it up and do something else?
Don't forget, I was married. I didn't have a family. I liked to travel, and it was so interesting. And I can say I personally saved the company. Yeah, I'm not bragging now, But I opened the new markets then, and nobody knew this, the Middle East. From Kuwait to Bahrain to Qatar, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Oman, and I created 4 to 5 new collections every year, and I sold out there, and this has saved IWC. But only financially. It was very few pieces. It didn't help the factory. I mean, we didn't have enough work. This is why we had the idea then to go into steel watches, and the top of the steel watch was the Ingenieur then.
Can you tell me, as someone that was around during that process, what was the idea behind it, and what was it like being involved in it? Was it the involvement of Mr. Genta and the response internally to his idea?
Well, as I said, in order to survive, because we knew we cannot produce quartz watches, because electronics, we had no idea. We were mechanical watchmakers. But we knew that if we want to survive, we have to make quantities of movements. And this can only be sold in steel and not in gold watches. So that's why we took the decision now. And we made several new models, but it was basically one new line called the SL line, which of course the top of the SL line was the Ingenieur. Now we're talking, ask me about Genta. May I ask you a question? Do you know any watch designer by name today that is this? Yeah, you're
Not
shaking.
many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exactly the same way it was with Genta. I mean, Genta was a designer, very creative. He charged 1,500 francs per design, and he became then very famous by founding his own watch company, Gerald Genta Watches. That's how the name became very famous. And I just read an interview now lately in 2009. He said, look, I'm not a designer, I'm an artist. And watches, I don't like watches very much. He said, this constricts me, this faces me in. Time, when I look at watches, reminds me of time. I want to be free, I'm an artist. So then the name Genta was not was not known, only later on, but the design, I would say, the designs he did were fantastic. And our Ingenieur then, absolute fantastic watch, but we ruined it a little bit ourselves because we told Genta, you have to design a round watch with steel bracelet, but inside the movement has to be protected by a double case against magnetism, and the movement has to be suspended on rubber cushions. And this automatically made the watch, I would say, bulky, pretty big. So at the beginning it was not great success because people said, wow, well, it's too thick, it's too, I don't know. So it took quite a time till people understood really what it was.
A little bit more broadly, like today, obviously the integrated steel sports watch is a category. It's a dominant force. At this time, it was a fairly new concept. Was it popular then? Or?
Steel watches we had before. I mean, to wear a steel watch with a steel bracelet is absolutely logical because you can wash your hand in summer. Let's say leather strap, you have to change it every so many months.
Great in the Middle East.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, metal bracelets are the logical thing.
Yep.
Only in the watch business, nothing is logical, and that's great. And so it was not logical. It was rather new, but steel bracelet, we always had steel bracelet. We had steel bracelet on the first Ingenieur, which dated back to 1955. We already had a steel bracelet with it, but fashioned was leather bracelet, croco straps and those.
Yeah. I've written a lot about it, and I find it an endlessly interesting time in IWC's history. And it's moving forward over the decade. But I think I'm taking the opportunity while I've got you here. Is the time of the later 80s and the early 90s when there was a Da Vinci, there was a revival of the Portuguese, there was, it seems to me, tremendous excitement around IWC.
It was, no doubt, but one of the really, important moments then in 1978, I signed with our financial manager the first contract with the Porsche family. And not with Porsche car factory, but with the sons of the factory. They had their own design studio, and they helped us in a way with new materials, new metals and so. This is why we made 1980, we made the first titanium chronograph, which was absolutely new. Swiss watch industry has never worked titanium. And it was a pretty, bad experience for us at the beginning, because up to then, as you know, the watch industry was clearly divided between manufacturers who made the movements, and then you had the companies that made the accessories like cases, bracelets, hands, etc. So a few months before we had the press conference with Porsche in New York to launch a titanium chronograph, our case manufacturer called us and said, very sorry, we tried, but we can't work titanium. So we were forced within a few months to build our own cases. And funny enough or strange enough, we didn't know that powder, when you work titanium, it can burn, it can explode. So we had watchmakers with black faces in Schaffhausen. It was really interesting.
That's crazy. And so again, that broad sweep of history, what IWC, obviously, so through the 80s and the 90s, there were some challenges, and then you were sort of really exciting throughout the 90s and, the 2000s, and today it's a new era. What has remained the same and constant throughout all your, decades of experience with the brand?
I think that's what we always said and what we are still saying. With all the machinery you have today, 3D dimensional things and whatever, the eye and the hand of the watchmaker is still what decides at the end of what the watch can and how it's delivered. And this is still the same, because I have to be careful now, over 30 years, we were the only watch brand who formed watchmakers, because the profession of watchmaking was given up in Switzerland, because the parents who were watchmakers told the kids, learn something serious, and So we were the only ones that always formed our own watchmakers, and this really paid off. There are a lot of brands that make nice watches and whatsoever, but I think still the spirit, and we're different because we're geographically already different.
Yeah.
It can have advantages, also disadvantages. In difficult times, to find people that will come from the French-speaking part to the German-speaking, they're very difficult. But now, of course, the profession of watchmaking has become very important again. Many, many years ago, it was hard to find an apprentice. Now we can really select out of many young people who would like to become a watchmaker, and the apprenticeship lasts 4 years, and we always form our own watchmakers.
Yeah. And what's your current role within IWC?
I give interviews.
Sorry?
I give interviews.
You're an approved spokesperson, huh?
No, I have a contract as consultant.
Yeah.
I still travel quite a little bit less the last years, because we couldn't. And I've given a lot of speeches, and I sit on a advisory board.
Sure.
But I'm not in the line, let's say. I don't take decisions.
Sure.
You know, I mean, this is...
Yeah.
I'm too old for that.
Your institutional knowledge, maybe.
Whatever you...
So again, you know, we were here. We're talking about the Ingenieur. We should talk about it a little bit. What about that sort of the next evolution of the Ingenieur in the 2000s, that era? What was your thought of it at that time, and how would you compare this current iteration to it?
Well, let's put it this way. I don't say that I always agreed with what was done, because I think we made almost too many different models of engineers. Because the original Ingenieur, like the one we is designed now, which I think is fantastic, has been modernized quite a bit, but it really keeps the DNA of Genta's design. And I think this is very important. And I personally, I tell our people, I say, be careful. Don't start like next year to make chronographs, make perpetual calendars, not in this line. Give this line a chance for a few years to settle down and become a known line. Because this is also a watch that from far, let's say from 5-10 yards away, you see, oh, it's an Ingenieur from IWC. I think it's very important.
So we shouldn't release moon phases next year in the Ingenieur.
No.
I hope they're listening to you. I hope.
No, but what we will certainly have is versions in gold.
Yeah.
And perhaps also, what do you call it, bicolor?
Yeah,
Steel
nice.
and gold. I mean, it's in a way a model that almost asks for it, you know, with a gold bezel and... No, this is okay. This doesn't change much of the basic look of the piece. Yeah.
What do you think about ceramic?
Yeah, I like ceramic. Yeah, well, you know, even if we would do it in ceramic, I mean, it wouldn't change the basic design.
Yeah.
And we could make it, but it's not so easy, you know. Producing ceramic watches is not so easy. I mean, it's really a challenge all the time, and the demand from the novelties from last year we made, Lake Tahoe and the green one, and so we cannot make enough now.
Yeah,
so
sure.
we have to make it step by step.
Yeah. It would actually look really good in a coloured ceramic, I think. But maybe we'll see that later. Who is it for? We're not just scientists anymore.
Sorry, I didn't quite...
Who is the Ingenieur for as a watch? Who should wear it?
I think it is a sports watch now. You know, I mean, when you look, is it for scientists? It's like pilot watches. Is it for pilots? You never saw a pilot that just navigates by his wristwatch. I mean, let's face it. So, no, it's somebody that wants accurate, solid, shock-proof, anti-magnetic watch. Anti-magnetism is quite important that people forget about it, because in labs, in hospitals, etc., where you have the tomographs, I mean, normally you have to take off your watch when you go there, and I mean, this one you could wear.
Yeah, right.
And so it has a real, I mean, there is a real reason that you could buy an Ingenieur for, even if I would say most of the people at the end do not care so much about the real facts. As I said, the watch industry is not logical, fortunately.
Yeah.
But I mean, these are really things we can talk about without creating crazy stories, because the history of the watch is there. We don't have to invent histories. We have the history, and that's important.
That's great. Well, it's been an honour talking to you. Thank you for taking the time out of, I'm sure it's still a very busy schedule. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your Watches and Wonders.
Thank you very much. All the best in Australia.
Great chat, Felix. I got to say, you know, we are milking your IWC Watches and Wonders experience a little bit, but it is nice to kind of hear all of the kind of happenstance chats that you had as you were wandering the halls of Watches and Wonders.
Yeah, different voices. That's great. And it was really, really a pleasure to meet him. Definitely the sort of guy you'd want to, I don't know, corner him at a bar after a long night and just sort of get some of the other stories. But,
He's the kind of guy who you want to land next to at like a watch dinner.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, thank you to IWC for supporting the show, IWCWatches.com. Thank you to everyone for listening. 5-star reviews or more, if possible, are ideal. Yeah. You can email us, Andy.
Join our Discord. Link that up. Nice. Email us otthepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Instagram, ot.podcast. As always, spread the word, spread the love, as Felix said. Give us some reviews, and we'll be back next week.
All right. See you later, alligators.